Hello friend, welcome back to my channel. If your name is Jessica, Alyssa, Cassidy, or maybe Vanessa, chances are you might have struggled with hand lettering that portion of your name that contains two S's side by side. Double S is by far one of the most tricky letter connections for me, but it's not the only tricky one. VR and WR are some pretty strong contenders as well. So in this video, I want to show you how to create beautiful connections with your hand lettering, even when it comes to some of those tricky letter connections. We'll be going over some of the ones that I think are the most tricky when it comes to hand lettering, and I'll give you some ideas to create them beautifully. So let's get right into the video. The first connection that I want to talk about is the OR connection. You might be wondering if you should loop the O or loop the R, or both, or neither. What is the right way to do it? Well, first I want to say that you can do it however you want to do it. This is not a rulebook type of video, and if you love it one way, then I'm cheering you on in your unique style. But if you're struggling, here's a simplified way to think of the OR combination. One loop or the other. Get it? Or like OR. I hope that helps you easily remember. OR is one or the other. So when I'm doing modern calligraphy, there are a couple of different ways that I can create my O. Two of them are with a loop or without. And the same goes for my lowercase r. I can write a simplified R like this, or I can add a loop to my R. But when it comes to putting these two letters together, a simple place to start is by choosing to add the loop to only one of them. So if you've got a super loopy O, maybe try the R that doesn't have a loop. But maybe you love the loopy R, then make a complete oval first, and then add that little connection next. Again, you can totally loop both or not loop both, it's up to you. But I think this is a good place to start to try to figure out what you prefer, and then you can build your style from there. This technique also works similarly for the WR and the VR combination. I like to add a little loop to my W's and V's, but because the loops are so small here, this does depend a little bit on what pen I'm using. It's kind of hard to get that loop if I'm using a super big brush pen. There are also times where I won't add a loop in either spot, and that's okay too. Like I said, I'm not here to bring rules to our hobbies. My goal is just to help you find some tricks to overcome the frustrating parts of hand lettering. But if you prefer it a different way, that's totally okay too. The next tricky letter combination that I want to show you is how to connect a couple of different letters to a lowercase p. This request actually came from one of you. So in an email with one of the members of this hand lettering community, I heard that PH, PI, and PS are sometimes a struggle. And so I want to show you that connection here if that's been a struggle for you as well. I want to start with some variations for creating a hand-lettered lowercase p. So first we have the one that is a simple P with another stroke added to it to connect it to the next letter. This is one of the more simple ways to connect, but it's not necessarily everyone's favorite look if they're going for a more modern style, and I get that. Myself personally, I usually draw a P that looks a little bit more like this one with a loop. So now that we have our base P with the ends ending around the same spot, we can add the next letter to them with just kind of drawing our letter into that exit stroke, with the exception of the S, which I'll show you here. So with the PS combination, we're not really connecting anything here. We're just turning that exit stroke into our entrance stroke for the second letter. So in this case, we're simply just kind of adding on the S to the end of that P. And that's where I think ending those exit strokes of each of your letters at about the same height can be super helpful when you're learning your letters individually. And the next tricky stroke that I want to show you is the double S stroke. I'm not going to pretend like I have just one quick, simple trick to make an amazingly beautiful double S. The fact is, this is a hard one for me too, and I don't necessarily mean that it's that tricky just to be able to do a double S connection, but sometimes it's hard to find one that works nicely with the rest of your word. So the best way that I've found to create beautiful double S combinations is to just have a variety of ways to do it that you've practiced and kind of are familiar with. That way, depending on how the rest of the word looks, what pen you're using, or what style of hand lettering that you're writing in, you can have some different options to try out and see what looks the best. If you want some extra help practicing these and even more tricky letter connections, I created some free worksheets for you that I will link below. I think tracing is so helpful when it comes to practicing a new hand lettering style or just hand lettering in general if you are brand new. In these worksheets, we cover 10 different tricky letter combinations, but for some of them, like the double S, I also gave you multiple ways to hand letter them, so overall there are over 20 different styles all ready for you to trace and turn your tricky letter combinations into something beautiful. Like I said, I will link those below, but if there are any other tricky letter connections that I may have missed, feel free to tell me down in the comments what they are, and if there are enough, I will make a part 2 of this video. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to grab your free worksheets, and I will see you in my next video.